Okay, so everybody, Boker Tov on this wonderful Erev Chanukah, day before Chanukah. And I know the title has lots of questions. We've spoken about some of these things in the past. I'm all sort of passionate about today's discussion, but because it's before Chanukah, so of course we will repeat some of these themes and discussions we've had in the past as it is most relevant for this year, Chanukah. But first I want to share a story that I shared on Instagram, on a short, less than 90-second post. And I want to share this story as an introduction to today's class with maybe a little bit more, not so rushed. So we can then use that as a sort of a diving, what's the word I'm looking for? a springboard into our general learning discussion as we get ready for Chanukah. Okay, first let's do the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niya bidvaro. I hope you prepared your coffee. I know we're a couple of minutes late. It's definitely been, Baruch Hashem, hectic. I know that some of you might know that we have the annual Chanukah festival today between 4 and 6 at the Sportsplex. We hope to see you. It's going to be a festive, beautiful event for all ages and stages of those who will attend. So we'd love to see you. Let me tell you the story. Then we'll have a discussion. Where's my sheet over here? I jotted down some notes. I would have liked to share actually more things, but again, it's hectic, Baruch Hashem. It's before Chanukah. It's a good hecticness, and not everything that I want to share did I organize in my mind. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, and if you have a question, you're always welcome to share it over here, and hopefully I will notice and we'll try to address. So, getting back to my Instagram story. So this story, the following story I heard from Rabbi Shais Taub, great speaker, thinker, and he said the following. He shared the following story. The story was about a fellow by the name of Hugo Green. Hugo Green was unique not in a positive way, unique in a somewhat sad and tragic way, that he was a concentration camp survivor. He later, after the war, was a BBC England either reporter or contributor. But what was unique about him is that he was in the concentration camp together with his dad, which was very unusual. He was there with his father. Usually, if you had a father, that meant that you were quite young, and they didn't, the youngsters were sent to the gas chambers because they had no use of you for the labor that they needed in the war effort. In this case, he was there with his dad. He was very young, but he apparently was tall for his age. He looked younger, and he ended up being in the concentration camp together with his dad. And he relates the following story. That one day, after, in a very cold day, working all day, he comes back at night to the barracks where they would get their couple hours of sleep on the wooden beds over there, the bare wooden beds. And to his horror, he sees his father, who tore off a piece of their uniform, their camp uniform, and was about to light it in this little piece of scrap metal that he found, using some of the butter, the daily ration of butter that he somehow managed to scrape a little bit of each day of butter, to put aside some butter to use that as a oil and to start this fire. And he was horrified because butter, the little fat that butter provided is enough to keep you going for another day. And sort of like instinctively, he shouted out to his dad, "Stop," or "No." And his dad turns around and he shouts to his dad, "What are you doing? You're getting rid of your basic need to survive, your food." And his father responds in the following. His father responds and says, I could live for some hours or a day without food. But I cannot live even one moment without the hope that the light of these Chanukah candles give me. And that is the story that Hugo Green shared that occurred when he was in the camp together with his father, highlighting the deep hope that was so needed in that hell in the concentration camps, that the Chanukah candle, that his father literally risked his life to provide so that they have Chanukah candles. But his father did not, was not concerned about putting his life on the line in terms of what the German overseer, if he would see him doing something religious like that. And on the other hand, Hugo himself was also, that was not what concerned him. What concerned him was, how could you give up your basic physical nourishment? And his father responded that this need for hope, for light, was to me more important than the nourishment that that butter provided. So that is the story that we shared. And I'm using this as my way of introduction to today's discussion, because there's so much we could talk about when it comes to Chanukah. But even though we do have some time, but we're nevertheless limited. And I want to discuss and share some of the messages we have of Chanukah. We could all understand, if you're listening to this Torah discussion, that Chanukah is not just about latkes. You know, I asked in the title, what do you love most about Chanukah? And you could say latkes, and perhaps that's what it is. But, or donuts, or dreidel, or family getting together. And that's all fine and fantastic and beautiful, but I'm sure we could understand that Chanukah is a lot more than just sitting down and eating latkes. We all know the famous Jewish line, every Jewish holiday can be summed up in 9 words. They wanted to kill us. We won. Let's eat. There's a lot more depth to what Chanukah has to offer. And it's kind of ironic, which is why I asked the questions, are your Chanukah candles, are my Chanukah candles still burning? And has Chanukah been too commercialized? And what does that mean? So let's get into it. First, I want to talk about the fact that we light the Chanukah candle. Now we know, I'm sure you know the basic story of Chanukah, that the Greeks came and they defiled the oil of the menorah, which was supposed to be very sort of kosher, special, pure, ritually pure oil. And they deliberately went ahead and defiled all the oil. It was sort of an objective. It was a goal that they defiled the oil. Why did they care? Why did they care to defile? Who cares? But they went ahead and they defiled the oil. We'll talk about that for a moment. And if I forget to talk about one of the questions I mentioned, please remind me. And they also, they went ahead and the Medrash tells us that they coerced the Jews to write in Hebrew the words the Medrash uses, Kisfu lachem al keren ashor she'en lachem chelek b'Yisrael. Write on the horns of the ox, which represents strength, that you have no part in the God of Israel. Is Chanukah relevant today? I would say Chanukah is most relevant. There is no other holiday that you could say is more relevant than Chanukah, as I will explain. The Greek society, Greek culture is in some very clear ways very similar, highly similar to what we have today. That was the modern thinking, the forward thinking, the progressive thinking, science, philosophy, human achievement, the human body, which is why the Olympics were developed, the human mind, that was all part of the Greek culture. The Bible, Torah, what we call Yiddishkeit, holiness, was archaic, was outdated. This recognition that there's something beyond our rational thinking, there's something greater than our thinking, and so on. There's a deeper power beyond that, was the antithesis. That was the spiritual battle. Everything as Judaism looks at it has a material, physical expression and battle that the Greeks had over here, which is why they just physically fought and tried to annihilate the Maccabees and so on. But that was a reflection of a deeper, more spiritual battle, cosmic battle of good and evil that was going on over here. And believe it or not, many, in fact, most of the Israelites, the Jews of that time, were with the Greeks. They were with the Greeks. They were the forward thinking. And if you stood up to that, you were outdated. You were fanatic. You were extreme, etc., etc. So, l'chaim. Let's talk about the jug of oil that they found. The jug of oil, they found one pure jug of oil. What is that? Let's see who's ringing. I don't think I can answer now. So what's that jug of oil that they found? The jug of oil that they found was the pure oil. What does that represent? Oil, it says in Kabbalah and in Hasidus, represents the core and essence of everything. Spiritually, that's what the oil represents. The shamnumit, the fats, the core, that's what it represents. The Greeks, defiling the oil, said, we don't only want to do battle with the outer expression of what we are battling in terms of the culture that we believe in. We want to get to the core. We want to defile the core of the thinking that produces an individual that sticks to the Torah as a godly wisdom. If they're learning Torah because it's an intellectual exercise, if they're learning Torah because it sort of stimulates them, by all means. But if, as we read in the Ahanero Talalu, Lashkicham Torah Techa, the Greeks wanted us to forget your Torah. Anything godly, which is beyond the human perfection, meaning if you're going to submit yourself to a higher power beyond the human perfection, human culture of its day, that's where their main fight and battle was. I want to give this the context within a Dvar Torah as well. L'chaim. I want to share a little personalness, over here. I give, thank God, different classes, in synagogue and individually, privately. And I want to say that this forum that we have here Sunday morning, for me, it has a certain special feeling. And I mean, it really has a certain special connection, even though it's over the internet, but there's a certain special connection, feedback that I get, just the more sort of comfortable environment that I find myself in. It's just so I'm sharing that personal moment with you, the listeners who give me the merit and opportunity to share words of Torah and Torah wisdom. Now, so a couple of weeks ago in the Parshat Toldot, we read the dramatic story of Jacob dressing up like Esau in order to get the blessings of his father Isaac. And over there, without going into all details, we read that Jacob comes into Isaac. Isaac thinks it's his son Esau, but it's Jacob, and Jacob is dressed in Esau's clothing. And in the Torah, in Genesis, in the Torah, in Parshat Toldot, it says, Vayorach es reach bigodov, and he smelled the smell of Jacob's clothing. And Rashi tells us, and he says, and in the verse it says that Isaac says to Jacob, see that the smell of your garments, of your clothing, is like a field that God has blessed. Now these are Esau's clothing. We wouldn't attribute that these have sort of a good smell to it. So what is this that Isaac is smelling this pleasant smell from Jacob's clothing? And Rashi over there says that he smelled the smell of the Garden of Eden. The Medrash says something quite fascinating, that the word begodov, which means garments, clothing, also can be read. It's the same letters in Hebrew. There's no vowels in the Torah, and the same word can be pronounced in different ways, and have different interpretations. The word begodov could also be read as bogdov. Bogdov means it's rebelliant ones. And taking that Medrash, the Medrash interprets this line in the Chumash that Isaac smelled the smell of the rebellious ones and said, look, it smells like a field that God has blessed. And here's the question, what kind of smell or pleasant smell and aroma would the rebellious ones give forth? And the Medrash says that this refers to prophetically to a fellow by the name of Yosef Meshisa. Yosef Meshisa, says the Medrash, and I've shared this story in the past. Yosef Meshisa was what's called a mityaven. He went along with the Greeks and helped them out in persecuting and stamping out Jewish observance, Torah observance. And in order to reward him, the Greeks promoted him, and then they, after conquering Jerusalem, said, we want to reward you. You could go into the Holy Temple, where there's a lot of really expensive utensils and objects and items and so on, and you could take whatever you would like. Take one item, take one vessel, and it's yours. He goes in, and what does he pick? He picks the menorah. Now, the menorah was huge, and it was pure gold, and it was highly expensive and symbolic and so on. And he comes out, and the Greeks say to him, no, that's not what we meant. Go back in. The menorah is not for you. That's way too much. You're taking too much. Go back in and pick something else. And Yosef Meshisa responds in the following. He says, I have angered my God once. I will not go back in to the holy temple, to God's home again and be disrespectful. They say, what are you talking about? Big deal. Just go back in. He says, no, I'm not going back in. Now it became a power battle over here, a power struggle. They said, no, you know what? We're not asking. We're telling you to go back in. And he says, no, I'm not going back in. I have angered my God once. I'm not going back in. They threatened torture. He did not back down. And they started to torture him terribly. He did not back down. He said, I angered my God once. I will not do so again. And he gave back his soul to his Creator in this deep spirit of repentance that reflected the core of his soul, which, although concealed, and covered in his helping the Greeks, the arch enemy of holiness at that time. But when push came to shove, his core of pure oil, which represents his soul, as King Solomon says, Neir Hashem Nishmat Adam, the candle of God is the soul of man. His core of pure oil was all of a sudden sort of fanned, and the flames came bursting forth. And at that point, nothing can be an obstacle, can stand in the way for its power. And that's what that core of oil represents. And that is what Yitzchak prophetically was sensing. By Yorach, he smelled the pleasant aroma of Bogdav, of the rebellious ones of Jacob's children. That when push comes to shove, when that core of pure oil that has been defiled by the Greeks, but when that core of our soul, God blew within us a spirit of himself, which can never be truly and totally extinguished. When that core of pure oil and fire from within is touched, is triggered, it breaks forth and pushes away all darkness. Chanukah, interestingly enough, unlike even other holidays, we celebrate primarily by lighting the menorah, even though the Maccabees were victorious. They were victorious against the massive Greek army, which is an amazing miracle. And we say the Alanissim, thanking God for that. And we say Hallel. But nevertheless, the main mitzvah of Chanukah is the lighting of the oil menorah, or a candle menorah, representing the spiritual inner victory that Chanukah represents. So therefore, I want to sort of bring this home over here, and perhaps maybe discuss one or two special characters of a candle, of a menorah, which King Solomon says, Neir Hashem Nishmat Adam. We light one candle the first night. It tells us the power of even one candle. One little candle of light is so potent, is such an important step. We don't immediately begin with 8 candles. Why not? 8 is better than 1. One candle, one kleine lichtele. Previous Rebbe would say in Yiddish, "Me darf sich zuhören zu was der Lichtelach erzählen." Give me a thumbs up for Yiddish if you understand Yiddish. We need to pay attention to what the candles are telling us. When you sit down and light that candle by yourself with your family, you got to pay attention. They're telling us such a deep story, and they're telling us so much of Jewish history. They're telling us such an important message. We find ourselves today in the best of times, and we also find ourselves in very Greek-like times. There is a real cultural battle that is going on within ourselves. We are attracted to ideas and values in this country and in Western society in general, which are totally the antithesis of holiness, of Torah, of tradition, of time-tested values. And you know what they are. I don't want to focus on the darkness, but there is some real darkness, closed, packaged, just like the Greek culture, in forward thinking, in development, in moving away from old archaic thinking, which is a force of negativity. You got light. One of the characteristics of light is, we use the term to shine a light. To shine a light on what the truth of what something is. When the room is dark versus when it's light, everything is there, is the same. Nothing changes. When you open the light, you could see everything for what it is, good and not good. Chanukah, when we light that, that's why Chanukah has, we asked the question, it's become too commercialized, it's become exmatized. These are my own words, I believe. I don't think they're in the dictionary. It is ironic that if you try to turn Chanukah into what a cultural holiday is, that's the opposite of Chanukah is about. Now, some things of the cultural, general society holidays have a lot of positives to it. I want to make that clear. But this need to not embrace or cherish and understand and connect to what is uniquely holy, traditional, Torah, Jewish about Chanukah is exactly what the Greeks wanted to achieve. Keep Torah, learn Torah, but disconnect it from the holiness, from the godliness. In addition to sort of influencing, inculcating, fighting against the time-tested values, which is so real today, which is a threat, a real threat to our society, to our well-being, to our purpose, to our mission, to our soul's purpose, goal, sanctity of our family, of who we are. And that when you sit down to light Chanukah, remember the following. Remember that you're lighting a light of holiness, reflecting the power of your soul, the power of goodness, the power of godliness, the infinite power. That's why the miracle of the light that keeps on burning, not to be extinguished. Despite all the darkness around. In fact, the mitzvah of Chanukah candles is to light it once the sun sets, symbolically speaking about the power and the mission and the point of Chanukah candles is to light it when there is darkness. And the power of light, which always, the power of true light, of holy light, which will always push away, be successful, continue to burn against the forces of unholiness in all its forms, in all its beautiful packaging, in all its attractive packaging. Let's shine a light both to ourselves and to those around us. On a practical level is make sure that every single person has a menorah to light, that a person share this message of Torah so that they understand the deeper significance of Chanukah. So when you sit down and eat latkes, which is fine because we relate to physical things, and the Chanukah is oily and reminds us the miracle of oil, but don't forget about the soul of Chanukah, what Chanukah's message is. And in doing so, we will again this year celebrate Chanukah in good health, in joy, in meaningfulness, with our family, with our friends, and we will merit, as the prophets tell us, to be able to relight, to reignite the Chanukah menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, which we're celebrating with the coming of Mashiach, speedily in our days, fulfilling what the prophet says, that there will be a great light. All will see truth from falsehood. We'll see goodness. We'll see holiness. We'll see the true essence, the core, the shemen, the essence of what really sustains us and the world around us. So let's do so. You should have a wonderful Chanukah. Get together with your family. Have fun. Have meaning. Share some meaningful thoughts. Give them some Chanukah gelt. Not presents, Chanukah gelt. That's the Jewish thing. Especially to your kinalach. Encourage them. Teach them. There's so much online that you can learn about Chanukah. Ask them questions. Reward them for good answers. Have a wonderful, fantastic Chanukah.